Good afternoon, everybody. This is Shaheen Motliker from Bowline Security, and welcome to day one of the masterclass. We've enjoyed your participation. We've been doing this for the last several months, and we really are overwhelmed by your registrations, and really appreciate the participation from all of you. Some housekeeping rules as we kind of progress through this masterclass. Please mute your microphones and do not share your videos. I think this helps with the overall management of the masterclass. The session is being recorded for replay, so you will get the session along with the materials by email every day at the end of the session. So you should have this in your mailbox prior to day 2 of the masterclass. And lastly, use the chat to type in your questions. Brad can moderate the questions, and if it's topical, he'll introduce it within the masterclass, or else it will definitely be addressed at the end of the session. So welcome again to day 1 of the masterclass.
Thank you, Shaheen. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is GB. I'm the founder and CEO of InfoSec Enforcer, and I would like to introduce Gavin. Gavin, hi.
Good afternoon. I'm an attorney, South African attorney, as opposed to an American attorney.
And obviously we have Brad. Hello, Brad.
Yes, I'm Brad. I'm the American attorney advising businesses on international data privacy compliance. So GDPR for a while, and now the next big privacy law that's going into effect, South Africa. So
thank you, and you all heard from Shaheen, and Subbu apologizes for not being able to make this panel today. However, he is part of our team as well. Now, having said that, quick disclaimer, Brad and Gavin would be very happy that this is not, we are not providing legal advice. If you do need legal advice, either contact Gavin or Brad or one of your attorneys. Well, having said that, let's jump right into it. I think all of you have heard of it. I don't want to spend too much time about the history of POPI. 2 dates to remember. The registration for the information officers and deputy has started a few days ago, 1st of May. So do send out your registrations. We'll talk about that. The enforcement date is not going to change. The 1st of July will be enforcement start. So you need to be aware of it, and you need to try and do whatever you need to do from now till the end of June and into potentially a little bit into July to get yourself compliant with the act. Hopefully we'll help you get there. And just to give you a broad idea about what is POPI Act compliance, what does it mean? We are not going to delve deep into article this, article that. We're just going to give you a business perspective so you have actionable items to take. So POPI Act is about 3 things primarily: respecting privacy rights, protecting the personal data, and processing that data, that personal data, lawfully, right? It applies to everybody in South Africa, and it awards certain consumer rights to all of your customers, partners, employees, shareholders, all of the above. Now here, Gavin, any comments on who it does not apply to?
To the dead.
To the dead. Yeah. So which means everybody, right? Yeah.
with death, you lose your rights to privacy.
Right. Now, having said that, let's move on. Now, what are the costs or penalties of non-compliance? We kind of put them in 3 categories. I show 2 here. And one of the categories that we do not show is your brand. The value of your brand, value of what you have built so far as a business, that could be potentially impacted. But the more tangible things are the fines from the regulator and the breach costs. The breach costs could be very, very high. Obviously, the fines from the regulator are up to 10 million rand, but they're not, they could be lower, they could be up to 10 million rand. There could be criminal prosecution. Again, that all depends on how the regulator figures out what to levy and what not to levy, right? But I would not, Gavin, comments on this specifically about the regulator fines from you would be nice.
Well, I wish I could promise that they won't fine, but that they will be fining people, but not immediately. They will still be focusing very much on education. In this country, there are many sessions. They're having probably about 5 or 6 information sessions every week at the moment.
Right.
But their attention, well, they are in fact now also talking to a group, apart from the other ones, to Virgin Interactive gyms here. If you had a major data breach, those of you who insist on being gymmers might like to look after your information as well.
Right. Right. Now, having said that, the question that we get asked very often is, will the law be enforced? I mean, Gavin gave you an idea already. The law will be enforced. And also think about it this way: a consumer who is unhappy with you sending them email marketing campaigns or you calling them, right, could file a complaint with the regulator, and the regulator will open an investigation. And the opening of the investigation by the regulator would itself cost you money. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about compliance, or thinking about potentially ignoring compliance. We would recommend strongly that do not ignore compliance. Okay. Now, having said that, how to navigate POPI Act compliance? In a broad perspective, we're going to discuss this in more detail over the next 5 days, today inclusive, right? Really think about it this way. It is not just legal documentation alone. You need to think about cybersecurity and data security. You need to think about your data, your IT. So it's a combination of all three is where the POPI Act compliance comes into play. Okay. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what is the POPI Act policy element of it, the privacy policy that you need to do, how you need to plan, what are the requirements, and those are the things that you need to think about. If you have a takeaway from our sessions, the most important would be get started today. Think about what it costs you, whether you do it yourself or you engage a vendor or you engage us. Think about what it costs you. One size does not fit all, by the way. So this is something that you really need to consider. Okay. Now, having said that, today we're going to talk about what are the requirements from a business requirements planning perspective that you need to do. What is the plan that you have? We're going to actually share all of this information with you guys, so you don't have to take notes. Just watch out for your email to get that. We're going to talk to you about your privacy policy. We're going to talk to you about your data collection and the purpose of data collection and the processing. We're going to specifically talk also about the disclosures and the notices that you need to put out on your website, maybe on your premise, all of the above, right? Now, having said that, before I start, Brad, any questions, any comments on, what we're going to discuss and that you want to share?
No, I mean, the thing that I think that all, Gavin, you and I always stress here is that it's going to feel like we're giving you a lot of information, but the important thing is to start doing something. Don't engage in, as I say, analysis paralysis, trying to think about where to start and not doing anything. Pick a place to start. It's probably with a privacy policy or thinking through that process and get started on it. Because when it comes time for a regulator to look at what you're doing or something like that, if that becomes the case, to have made some progress towards something does a lot more than not having done anything. So
right. Gavin?
So don't be intimidated by the process. Just get started somewhere.
Yeah.
I agree with Brad. It's better to do something than nothing.
Yes.
And that is what will be the test. What have you done? Have you made any attempt whatsoever to be compliant?
Yeah, I like the operative word that you use, attempt to do something, right? You may not be perfect at it. I don't think any company would be perfect at it from that perspective, but you need to make attempt towards improving your data protection plans and all of these other things. But let's first today talk about requirements. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
No, we, on the same context, we come from that simple perspective. It needs to be pragmatic. It needs to be fast. You should be able to do things quickly. And so we basically say, let's do a phased implementation. First, address what we call essentials, and we'll discuss what they are. And those essential stuff should be done in about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, at the most a month or two. If you don't have significant amount of time to allocate to it, you should get this done really quickly. Okay. And the next phase would be about security. Security, we mean cyber security. What are you doing about your securing your systems? So you can actually plug some simple holes that you might have in your systems, right? And then comes the automation part and the data processing part. We will discuss all of these over the next few days, but we will focus today on the essentials. Okay. Now, having said that, what are those essentials? These are some of the few key requirements, right? Get consent to do direct marketing. If you do direct marketing, what we mean by direct marketing is email marketing. It could be advertising. It could be sending emails, mailers, discount coupons, whatever you might be doing as part of your marketing effort. You have personal information of those individuals. You need to get consent for that. Okay. The other thing is notifications, which is just nothing but privacy policy. What is your privacy policy? How should you draft your privacy policy, right? How should you put up your notices about that privacy policy? Where should you put them, right? So all of that comes into play. And the third piece is buying personal data from third parties. Like, you totally have to stop this. Today, you cannot buy personal data from third party. Gavin, comments about that? This is a hot button item, right?
Yes, very much so. The Direct Marketing Association is very unhappy, but it doesn't mean that you can't market. You must get prior informed consent before you can market. You have to change the way you take your clients on, how you deal with people. But exactly, you can't just buy pre-digested data lists any longer. That's the whole, that's really a no-no.
Right. And the next piece after that would be respecting the privacy rights of the consumer. And we will discuss this also, I think tomorrow or day after, in more detail. So you need to basically give, if the consumer or your customer or your employee basically says, hey, do not track me, or you have my last name incorrect, modify, change that, stuff like that we discussed earlier with respect to consumer rights. You need to respect those privacy rights, and we'll discuss what that would mean. You need to process them properly. Okay. Also, you need to notify people if your data, if there is a breach, if there's a ransomware, you need to actually tell people about it. I mean, that's one of the key requirements, right? And you need to secure data and maintain that confidentiality. And obviously, we talked a bit about the registration of information officer and deputy. You need to do that also. Okay. Now let's jump into the details of this, right? We provide a compliance framework associated with it. You kind of put it in like 4 different categories. Today, we would be addressing the privacy policy and notices element of it. Then we will talk about data subject rights, which is the respecting consumer rights we discussed over the next, I think tomorrow or day after. Okay. Now, how do you go about implementing the framework? As you can see, when we talk about privacy policy and notices, within the privacy policy, if you do need to make changes in your privacy policy, if you do not have one, you need to start with one. Okay. What are your external policies look like? What are your just-in-time notices look like? Do you provide notices to your employees Do you provide notices to your job candidates? Okay, so all of these things need to be taken into consideration, right? And obviously, you then need to look at what is the purpose of your data collection, what are the categories of data you collect, what are the sources of data you collect, and how do you put out the direct marketing notices. All of these things come into play. And all these pieces will then form your privacy policy, right? You need to incorporate all of these in your privacy policy. So today we will also discuss about the privacy policy draft template, and we will go through that briefly about that. Okay. Brad, questions on the implementation of the framework? This is more like a prescriptive piece that we put together, right? It's a project plan. You can do check marking of this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, each company is going to be a little different based on where your primary risks lie, right? In terms of the type of data that you have and that. And certainly because everybody that you collect information about is an important piece that you have to address compliance for. But if, for example, you have 10 employees, but 200,000 customers, your larger risk in terms of responding to different privacy concerns is probably going to be with that customer base than it's going to be with your employees, though you need to address all of them. So,
right. Cool. So we will provide you an example implementation plan. It's an Excel spreadsheet that we'll share with you. Okay. And you can actually download that and create your own implementation plan. Okay. Let me see if I can show an example of that quickly. Here is the POPI Act compliance project plan that we're going to share with you. And you will have all of the pieces that we talk about here. Where are your applications, where you do store the data, categories of third-party processing that you do, collection categories, collection purpose, all of these pieces as a project plan from the essentials phase perspective that you would have here. Now, having said that, let's get back to our presentation. Okay. By the way, could you see that, Brad? You could see the project plan on my screen, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Now, having said that, we also said thanks to Brad and Gavin, who put together a privacy policy template for you. We would also make that privacy policy template available for you as a Word document. So you could modify it and you could deploy it as a privacy notice on your website, keep it available to share it with your customers when you do have that. So let me show. So you can see the sample privacy notice here, right? Okay, and so here we have it in such a way that you could modify, search replace company with your the name of your company. Okay, and you can actually put the categories of personal information that you collect right here. That would be specific to your company. So we make it very, very easy. Thanks to Brad and Gavin, actually, who put this together laboriously. So we could actually give it to you, and then you can use it as is. No charge, free of cost. Okay.
Brad, I mean, the advantage here is that it really does get you asking the critical questions that I think you're going to need for a lot of other aspects of compliance. So, so that's part of the reason we think this is a useful place to start, because you need to understand what data you have, who that data, is coming from, who you're sharing it with. And those are all the other pieces you're going to have to address compliance for. So.
Yeah. And Gavin, this is a requirement under POPI, right? This is not something we are just saying, hey, this is a good thing for you to do. This is a requirement that you need to disclose the sources of personal information. For example, Cool.
And if you get, as you said earlier, this is a good place to start. It makes you think correctly, and you take it from here.
Right. And so this will also be available for you when we send out the email with all the materials and the video later today. Maybe you could start to do this early in the morning tomorrow. Okay. Now, having said that, the key elements of the privacy policy are going to be about readability, purpose of data collection, which we talked about, sources of data collection, the categories of data that you collect, right? What we mean by categories is you don't have to list every field you collect. That could be like 1,000 different types of records you might be collecting. You don't have to list all of the records. You just have to list categories of the records. We collect vehicular information or health information or network information if you're collecting information on your website, for example. So that's the categories that we talk about. Also, there is specific aspect of it with respect to direct marketing that we call out here, right? So you need to look out for the direct marketing communication. How do you do that, right? And you also need to insert a method or mechanism for people to opt out of direct marketing. So some of these things that we are talking here will actually help you to be more, compliant very, very fast. Okay. And third-party sharing. Do you share information with third parties? You don't have to list out every individual company that you work with, that you share information with. For example, your vendors, you share information with your vendors, you share information with your cloud service providers. You don't have to list every individual company. You might just list categories of companies that you work with and share information with, right? Brad, comments?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Because I think that it's important. Sometimes with clients, I ask the question, who are you sharing data with? And they automatically think that, some sort of like third party sending data or selling data. And that's not really, it's anybody that you're engaging. So, your email providers or your, CRM, where you have your customers, your Workdays and that of the world where you store your employee data. Those are all third parties that are having access. And so you have to think strategically through that piece. So
yeah, or for example, your subsidiary companies or your parent company
exactly
that you're sharing data with, right?
Yep.
All of those also come into play, right? Related companies kind of transaction. Right?
In our case, I'm one of those boring conveyances. We do work for banks, and we have to, all our information goes to the bank. So I've just got a thing here with one of the banks. I've required a service level agreement with them about how they will manage the data that goes to them from us and vice versa.
Right.
They objected initially, then they realized I was talking sense. And I have to do it to protect my firm or myself.
Right. Absolutely. Financial institutions are really critical in this because they have a lot of your information, sitting with them. Right. Credit bureaus too, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, now getting into some juicy, nice parts of it. We will have the Kindle book available for you as a free copy on 5th of May. So please do look out in your mailboxes for an email. A number of people have sent emails back saying we don't want to sign up to Kindle Unlimited. You do not have to sign up to Kindle Unlimited. Just have to download the Kindle software for you to be able to download the free copy of the book on that specific day. So if you miss the day, you'll have to wait for the next promotion that we do for the free Kindle book. So we'll have this available for you on May 5th. Okay, please do keep out on a lookout for that. Now, having said that, we've promised a number of free tools and we're going to have them all in your mailboxes. We're going to get the implementation plan in your mailboxes, the privacy policy template in your mailbox pretty shortly. As I mentioned, the free book that we talk about there as well. And we also have free POPI compliance software. We have a free tier, absolutely free, no hidden cost, no nothing. Iravan or Brad will drop that link on the chat box right now for you to sign up to our free POPI compliance software. Do sign up. It will help you get through some of your compliance pieces, and we'll talk more about how to use that software over the next few days. Okay. And we also have a generic PIA manual, and that is just recently updated, right? The regulations for PIA. Gavin? Yeah.
The draft regulations as the 29th of April. So it's going to change it a bit, simplifies it in many respects.
Right.
But we're still, we can send anybody who wants them, I'll send them to them. But we're not quite sure what they want from us yet.
Exactly.
It's actually just tying it up to get the PIO with POPI, the two are coming together to a fair extent.
Exactly.
And of course, there are forms, and they're more forms, and they're more forms.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, really quick, because I already had someone say they're having trouble with the free toolkit. If you're having trouble with the software or the toolkit, you reach out to DB or Raven, and they will work through any technical issues that you're having, rather than trying to work through it on this call. But but I also think that, Gavin, the changes in regulations highlights one of the trickier aspects of doing this in general, which is, DB said, perfect compliance is hard, and I almost say that perfect compliance is impossible, because as regulations change, as you have a new law, you don't know exactly how regulators are going to interpret something. So perfect compliance is impossible. You just need to do the best you can with the information that you have, and that's the way it is with a new law sometimes. So
correct. And if any other attorney told you otherwise, they're doing you disservice. The two best attorneys are telling you something really simple. Listen to them.
Pragmatic, practical approach is the best one.
Is the best approach, right? Yeah. Now, having said that, we have to talk about InfoSec Enforcer briefly. We provide, obviously, a very comprehensive solution, okay? And the best thing we offer is a no fines guarantee, and we'll discuss that if you're interested. Okay, we are one of the few companies that provide a lot of software automation, and security is part of that. So you see a lot of law firms, consulting firms, and attorneys, accounting firms actually providing POPI services, okay? And nothing wrong with that. They provide you a service, obviously, and we are better primarily, okay? Having said that, we are obviously the experts. We have about 1,200 plus customers using our POPI compliance software. And we also have over 40 certified experts ready to jump in and provide you support. So we are ready here to help you guys, whichever way possible. Okay. Now, having said that, this week only, we have, and I mentioned to you, sign up for the free package. It's free forever, right? On the bronze package is where we start to offer a no fines guarantee. It's only about 17,000 per month. You can cancel anytime. Now, this week only, we are offering a promotion, and Eleven is going to drop the link for that promotion for you to sign up, and you're going to get a 20% discount for the whole year on that 17,000. Okay, so for 12 months, you will get 20% discount on this. Okay, having said that, I want to leave to Q&A. Brad?
Sure. So two simultaneous questions about information officer. Who and where do you register with? You'll register with the information regulator. Right. Gavin, where are we in terms of, do they have that up and running yet in terms of a place to send your registration?
If you look at their Twitter site, there's a bit of a glitch with the software for it. But okay. we have now got an email address. You can email it in. I think I did an update. TV, did I send you the updated comments, which you can set up a lot for people.
So the other thing also is, on our software, we also provide you a way to download the beta form. It's exactly the same information that the regulator provides, and a way to actually send that form. Once you sign it, you can actually mail it to them or email it to them. So we have that information on the site available for you as well.
Comment on that most recent thing from Lily. Do you want to bet as to whether the portal will be available this week or not? I've been talking to a couple of the board members, and we've just been laughing about it. There's the usual thing a bit of overreach and so on, but it will happen.
Yeah. So when that happens, hopefully we are going to get an API interface to that form, and we'll be able to send the information as well to them. Again, that portion of it, we're not going to charge anybody because that's a free service provided by information regulator, and it should be a free downloadable form or update from our software as well. Okay.
Yeah, and GDPR was effective in May of 2018, so 3 years ago, and there are many things we're still waiting for the regulators on 3 years later. So hopefully, at least this piece that they can get resolved, because it's an important piece. So along with that question, who should fulfill the role of information officer? Is it a technical or purely administrative role? I think that Gavin, maybe weigh in. You want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, it's neither of those. It's a sophisticated requirement.
Yep.
Whoever deals with it needs to be A, senior in the management, B, to understand POPI, and C, be prepared to deal with it. So you will need to have a suitably senior person who understands POPI. It's not a technical requirement. It's going to be a requirement, and a lot of it's going to be, you're going to be asked a question, you're going to be challenged, somebody you need to reply to it both legally and practically. So you need a fairly sophisticated person for that role.
Right.
How do the policies you're referencing compare to the manual being referred to in PAIA? So I think that in many cases they're similar or the same in terms of the way to think about it, but there's some additional things you're going to need to address for POPI. Would you say, as Gavin is somebody that's more familiar with what's in a PAIA manual?
Yes, and the regulations, the draft regulations, have in some senses simplified, in other sense made it a little bit more complicated, but let it all come out in the wash first. It'll start to happen in the next month or so. You need an information manual, because that is, you look at your information, where it is, what it is, who has access, why they have access, and what control you have over it. Those are the basics. The rest of it will follow. So don't over worry about it. I've sent DV a very quick comment on it. I'm actually redoing it for 2 large sectional title schemes at the moment. They got very excited this morning, and I said, just chill, I'll sort it out.
Right.
Got it. All right. So this one says, we are keen to know more about sharing and requesting information data in and out of SA. I'm not.
Cross-border. I think that's cross-border.
Okay. Oh, in and out of, I see. Sharing in and out of South Africa. Yeah, we'll get more into detail about cross-border transfers in a later session, because there are some additional complications with regard to that. So we'll table that question for a later date. Do we need evidence that we have permission to collect all information in our CRM? For example, customer would provide basic information when opening an account, but the account manager finds out the birthday of the client's buyer and enters that into our CRM so that she can call him on his birthday. I think that there's some internal education around this about not inputting that type of information. I've had these debates in the GDPR space with my clients where they say, but we want the children's names and their birth dates in there so that we can reach out. And I said, that's just a bad idea. We should just not be doing that. There's not a legal justification for that, right? Sort of convenience of making the reach out and making a sale or something is not a legal justification for that additional step. I don't know any other thoughts on that, but that's usually where I come down on those issues.
And just in passing, Brazil is implementing an act very similar to ours at the moment. I've got fairly strong connections with those involved, or some of those involved. We had a Zoom session on Friday about it. They're very interested in where we are, and the regulator is not yet in place. But all the questions we were getting from the students and the attendees were very similar to these. So it's an international issue.
Yeah, and I do remember this stuff from my previous experience. You would want to know everything about the customer if they like classic cars like Gavin.
Right?
Are they likely to go to a race course? No, that is information you do not need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to understand the responsibility for POPI compliance in two scenarios. A vendor sells software to a customer and the data is maintained within the customer network. Second scenario is where a solution is sold but hosted in a public cloud by the vendor. In the second scenario, I assume the vendor is responsible for data access and security. I mean, that's really something that, so I would say in both of those scenarios, the third-party vendor, you have to assume that they are a third party that is processing the information, whether they are just accessing or whether they are storing and accessing. You need to hold them to a certain standard under POPI. I think the rest of it in terms of who's responsible for security and that, I mean, that's going to depend on, that's something you work out via contract on and what the data is and where it's stored and all of that. So that's a really, there's a lot of moving pieces to work out via contract there. That you need to work out because you do have to define who's responsible, but the law doesn't necessarily say who's responsible, except for you as the entity. You have ultimate accountability for any third parties you're engaging. So you need to be writing your contracts in a way that you're protected and have the right kind of liability in that.
No, having said that, also there is the other shoe that hasn't dropped, right? Like, oh, we're going to talk to Microsoft or Google, and we are using a Google Gmail G Suite service. What should we do? Because a small business or even a large business cannot renegotiate those contracts with Microsoft and Google, and you just have to take their stock contracts as is. So our suggestion would be to go read those stock contracts and see what is better for you, from a data processing agreement point of view.
And be prepared to be shocked at how much you've given away.
Yes. Yes.
Look, we're not the Australian government, which has just basically beaten Facebook off as far as that's concerned. But I think that's going to ripple out quite a lot around the world in the next year or so.
Exactly. One of the things I like to stress to my clients is, one of the ways that you can typically get some additional levels of protection to at least offer something, to at least ensure that you're getting additional levels of security is use a paid service and not a free service. For example, Dropbox has a free version and a paid version, or any services like that. If it's that level of storage, usually for some of those, the paid version has additional levels of security. But you can check and see if it's the same contract either way. Then maybe it doesn't matter. But I would check that as well. So, but that's just one note, and some of those larger entities, right?
Yeah, and of course, one of the reasons that we're talking about, one of the reasons for Google et al. Having greatly increased profits in the lockdown and so on, because dealing in information has become absolutely vital, and their businesses have increased substantially. So it's something we have to accept, but you resist it where you can, and if you're better informed from your POPI point of view, you'll see the intrusions that you can prevent.
Yep.
And just be sure you don't do it to anybody else.
Yep. So we have one more question, and I think we can be done here. Can one keep copies of clients' things like passports and ID on our computers? I think the answer is, what's the purpose, and can that purpose be achieved without a copy of the passport or ID?
Yeah.
If you're a travel agency and you have to send a copy of a passport or something like that to an airline, then maybe you do need all of that. But that is the question for any piece of data, right, Gavin?
Yes, it must be adequate and not excessive for the purpose. Exactly as you said. Just give me your ID. Why? If I don't really need it, always ask yourself that question. Why am I asking for this piece of information? And quite often you'll be surprised. I don't actually need it.
Yeah, but sometimes I think sometimes they might want it as a unique unique identifier kind of stuff also. So you just need to consider your purpose of requirement. Yes.
Yeah. So someone responded saying insurers demand that we get a client ID. Well, if that's the case, that there is an insurance company that's demanding a copy of the client ID, then that's a pretty clearly defined purpose, right? And then I guess then the question is, do you need a scan of the ID, or do you just need the ID number or something like that? And can you achieve it? And, just thinking strategically about that. So.
And of course, something else is that increases your need to keep such things secure.
Correct.
Correct.
But information is, you've got an extra obligation for security there.
Correct.
Yep. All right. I think that's, yep. I'm getting a lot of examples of why we need IDs, which is great.
Which is great. Which is exactly what
that's why
we
I'm
need
saying,
to
like,
do.
like, it's not that you can't get the ID. It's like, there might be a reason you need it. So.
Correct.
Yes,
correct.
and that's an exception in, as you say, these people FICA legal matters. The Act provides for that. If you're obliged to do it, yes, you can collect it, but it doesn't mean that you mustn't be careful with that information.
Yeah. So there were also times, for example, I don't know whether all companies do this. Sometimes they ask an ID check if you are, over drinking age limit or not. If you're buying cigarettes, things like that. It's a check, not a requirement to actually give ID. It's not that, right? Same thing when you go to a restaurant. Credit card. Are you the same person? Show me the ID. Could be there. It's a check again. Be careful about the specific purpose, or you're going to collect the data and keep that data. So you need to really think about it. Where is the collection element? Where is the verification element? Verification could be visual verification also. Okay, you don't need to actually take a scan of it. Don't make that mistake, right?
Yeah. All right.
Do you want to do these other ones, Brad, about the access boom and
yeah, I was going to say, if you want to just address those quickly, then we can go into tomorrow with no questions pending.
First thing for producing a driver's license is no, it's not required. I've had many squabbles, and the schemes I do work for, I've had them change their policy because our simple questions to trustees: why do you want it? What are you going to do with it? Where's it kept? Do you understand the risk of getting that? So that they've backed off from that, but it's going to be a case-by-case squabble as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
And ensure and wanting nature work, on what basis do they want to know? Why do you ask them, why do you need to know this?
Yeah.
I mean, unless if they say because we're worried if are they running a chemical laboratory in their unit, which increases the fire risk. But apart from that, it's got nothing to do with them.
Yep.
So it's all coming to relevance of information and excessive detail. So that's where it's a change of mindset, really, that we're all going to have to go through.
Correct.
That's right.
I think it's the same thing applies for this COVID registers at entrances. I mean, why do you need an ID number? I mean,
well, the regulations specify that.
Correct.
Our emergency regulations.
Got it.
So that's why they can do it.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, if the law is saying you need something, if there's some other law outside of POPI that says that you need to be collecting something, then that's typically permitted under POPI. So
excellent. No more questions, Brad?
It's only as good.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment that sort of information is only as good as what is provided. For most of it, it's pretty casual. Fill in your ID number. Nobody checks your ID. So I mean, I tend to put 11111. Couldn't be bothered, and I get through it. That's the test.
Last question. Any more?
No, I think we'll leave. There's one remaining, but we can leave that let's leave that for tomorrow, I think. So, because I want to sort through exactly what they're asking for. So,
okay, great. Thank you, guys. Tomorrow, same time, same link. We will send out the material across to you. And thank you very much for your participation. And I hope this is useful. The free software registration links are in there. And the 20% discount piece is also in there, and you will get that in your emails as well. Okay. Appreciate the participation. Take care. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.